Hey, everybody, what's up? Welcome back to the Soul Rising podcast. I'm Amanda McCoy Flanagan.
I am
And
Ginny Oliva Smith. Thank you guys for being here with us. It's a snowy Monday. We're glad to be back with you guys.
yes, it's awesome. This is season 2, episode 8. We're calling this one The Many Faces of Grief. And I don't know if you've heard in one of our other shows, I think we told you the crazy story.
This show, what it has, yeah, this show didn't want to come out until today.
It didn't.
It,
We tried
it
so
didn't.
hard. We recorded this thing from front to back twice.
Yeah, all the way. Amanda, even
Yeah.
you tried to edit it too, right? And it just,
We tried on 3 separate days. 2 days we got back to back, and then, like, another day, it just was, like, 2 hours of just we couldn't even get it to record, so we were like, "You know what? Alright, universe, we get it.
we got
But
to
we
let this
hear
one
you."
go for now. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was wild. It was wild because we just couldn't, yeah, we couldn't get it wasn't ready to
And
happen
that's
at
not
that
like
time.
us.
No.
Usually, we can do anything, right? And it
Yeah.
just was like, "What the hell?" So we
Um,
realized we were up against it, and we were like, "Alright, we're just gonna listen to the energy and just hold off on this one." So,
yes, and I'm glad we
today
did because here we are, and it's
yes.
like a perfect day, and it's a little snowy where we are, a little chilly.
Yeah. And we
It's,
got 2 feet of snow last week, and now we got, like, another probably, I don't know, 6 or 8 inches today.
did you guys get that much?
Yeah,
We get
my table in the yard is our
Wow.
barometer, not barometer, our
like you're
measuring
measuring?
stick, and
Yeah,
yeah, it looks about 8 inches. We get a little bit
crazy.
more, I think, up here at my house because 'cause we're a
Yeah.
couple of 100 feet higher,
Yep. Hey, we were
this
we
hill.
were definitely around 5 or so. It was just more that it was freaking cold, dude. We went outside, Tom was going outside to shovel, and he's like, "It's 16 degrees out here. It's so freaking cold."
And it was,
So,
like, 60 degrees, like, a couple days ago. It's just
oh,
Colorado, I love it. I mean,
it
look at
is.
that.
Keeps us
Look
on
at
our
this.
toes.
So beautiful. So
It's
it
beautiful,
does.
seriously. Yeah, it does. It
A
keeps
pain
us
in the
on our
ass
toes.
sometimes.
This
So
is
anyway,
spring.
Ginny and I, we wanna cheers to the Colorado snow on our in our new Soul Rising mugs. Yeah, baby.
Yes, we were
Cheers.
so excited Amanda got these. I don't know, you got them? Did somebody on Etsy do them? Who did you
Yes, I got 'em
They
on
did a
Etsy.
great job. They really did.
Yes, I have 2 extras if we ever have, this
Thank
thing ever evolves and we have in-person guests sitting around a table someday,
Be
hopefully.
amazing.
And we have 2 more because the first round came out, not good. Like, it's like, I don't know, they were, like, lines through it or something, so they sent us a couple more, so anyway,
We
yeah,
have
so we are
extras.
so happy to be here. We're gonna talk to you today about the many faces of grief.
Mm,
And, this is so important because I personally believe, and we've said this probably a million times on the show already, if you've watched other episodes, that the main source of our pain, personally, and then out in the world, is that we don't know how to process painful feelings, mainly
mhm.
loss, feelings of loss, because it brings us back to um, our childhoods, essentially. And something a little phrase called emotional abandonment.
Oh, yeah, I've never heard of it, Amanda. What are you talking about? It's big struggle for all of us, I think. That's such a common thing we've all gone through one way or another, whether you had a perfect childhood or not, whether it was relationship, there's a lot of or whether you even we abandon ourselves at times. I hadn't thought of it in that way until you brought it up, and it makes perfect sense to me that we have a really tough time processing what we anticipate, bringing us back to that feeling of being left or being left behind for whatever reason.
Yeah, and very
Totally makes sense.
quite naturally, sometimes. I talk about it all the time. There's a whole spectrum, and it's kind of just naturally what happens from the nature of growing up.
Mhm.
Like, you're left at preschool, or you're left in your crib crying, or you're feeling a certain way. And especially back in the day, a lot of the way the
Mhm.
parenting was, they didn't really have all the tools to say, like, well, how are you feeling? Like the
Right.
stuff that we do now, our kids will be doing it a lot differently and a lot better when they're
Mhm.
parents. But the way we do it now is different than the way it was done then. And the way it was done then, there wasn't a whole lot of respect, right? Children were seen and not heard, and all that kind of stuff. So just by the nature of the way things were, a lot of people in our generation have experienced a bit of that, and people still. I mean, they're still experiencing it, right? Like people are so
Right.
busy, they're working all the time, or I use an example in my book, like Daddy had to miss the dance recital again because,
Mhm.
he's an ER doc and he got called in, right? So it's just by the nature of life.
Oh,
Nobody's
yeah.
really, I mean, some people I could say are at fault or just didn't know any better or just were
Mhm.
unskilled.
Right.
But for the most part, I think a lot of it happens unintentionally, just out
Mhm.
of the nature of life. And it's supposed to be that way.
Yeah,
We're
that's how
supposed
we
to experience pain so that
yeah,
we can grow.
and it's how, we brought it up so many times too, but in that evolution of things, right? It's like, our parents were raised by their parents, who their parents grew up, in the depression, where dad was away at war and these stories. I think I told you this about my grandmother, but hearing those stories at her funeral, that when her husband was away at war and they were living in another country, like somewhere else, and someone breaks into the house with her and her 5 kids, and her youngest is an infant at the time, and has her at gunpoint.
Yes.
Like,
You
yeah,
did tell me
right?
this.
And it was like she did this whole my aunt walked in on the situation, and she was like, "It's okay," like, super calm, telling her, "Hey, he's
Mhm.
just showing me Halloween costumes, like, go
Yeah.
ahead and go
Yeah.
outside." Either
Yeah.
way, like, at that time, that's what they're struggling with, right? Where
Yes.
they're
Different
teaching
day.
it yeah, different day and survival, like, the things you're
Yes.
having to survive through were our parents, same thing, and
Yep.
now here we are, trying to figure out how to teach our kids to survive, the things
And
we're dealing with now.
and we use the phrase a lot. Ginny talks about old hardwiring, right? It's like we needed those things to survive then, but we don't need them now. So one way that
Right.
we can sort of uh, catch up, I
Mhm.
guess, or undo that and rewire, essentially rewire
Yeah.
ourselves.
Get the upgrade.
Uh, yep, is by acknowledging and seeing, okay, where is this feeling popping up that I'm
Mhm.
so desperately trying to avoid? Because humans want to avoid pain at all costs. It's just like what we do, right? And, sometimes I wonder, that phrase toxic positivity is out there, like always being positive and always looking at things on the bright side and kind of just glossing over the painful part or always staying grateful, right? Like, am I using, oh, I'm so grateful for my life and everything that I'm not giving myself the opportunity? It's an avoidance technique, defense mechanism. Like, if I'm always so grateful for everything, am I avoiding looking at the hard stuff and the painful stuff that happens every day? So why we're calling this the many faces of grief is grief pops up. These feelings of loss pop up in such just mundane, kind of normal ways that we don't
Mhm.
recognize as loss. Change. I mean, change. Let's just go to like the biggie. Any kind of change. Good
Yeah.
change, bad change, whatever you want to look at it.
Yeah,
However you
even
want to
if it
label it.
is a positive change, it's still a change and you're not in the normal familiar environment that you think you've got control of. I think that's part of it. It's like when we grow, when we change, we're going to be in this environment where even though we're hilarious because we think we're like little puppeteers and we've got control over all the things, we
Yeah.
really don't.
Right.
We don't.
Control is an illusion.
Yes, but it really we're faced with the reality of it when a situation changes, our environment changes, our work changes, our friendships changes, our marriages, or whatever they are. Not even at times when may not even be a divorce. There's evolution and how things are and things not being the way
Yes.
they were, or
Yeah.
relationships with our parents, our family, our siblings,
Hmm.
our friends that were like, oh yeah, these have been my lifelong friends, where we are faced with that reality of like, "Oh, I'm really not in control." So it's like the change
Yes.
itself feels like, "Okay, well, now I feel sad." That's because 'cause I'm not
Yeah.
in control. I'm not in control of this, and this freaks me out.
Yeah, yeah, and like we said, control is an illusion, and all this, resisting that change is what
Mhm.
really causes the pain, right? There's like a Buddhist idea of it's not the pain that causes the pain; it's the resistance to the pain that causes the pain.
Yeah.
And just going with it, going
Mhm.
into it, and like letting it flow, and
Mhm.
not using this like, oh well, everything is, yeah. I mean, I truly believe everything happens for a reason, but like
Mhm.
not just using that as a way to gloss over it, but to remember that, like, it's all the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
If this wasn't essentially at some point for my highest good, then, and trusting that maybe there's something out there that knows a little bit more about how my life is supposed to go than I do, right? Because if I look at all the times that I impose my own self
Oh,
will,
man.
those times don't really go too well,
Yeah,
right?
those times we're like, "Oh god, you think you're so great. I'm gonna go ahead and take over."
Yeah. Get out of
Doesn't
the way. You don't know what you're doing.
It
I got
never
this.
goes that well, and it's really is a balancing act because a balancing practice. Because 'cause you're right, there are times it could definitely be used to gloss over, like, "Okay, well, I don't necessarily wanna feel the pain," and then, you know, you might be somebody who is addicted to continuously staying in the soundtrack, of like, "We're gonna keep it going. No, like, my childhood was shit. I'm gonna keep playing this soundtrack because that's familiar," right? So it's
Yes, it's what you
weird,
know.
this balancing act of not avoiding, the pain, right? And like you're saying, having this positivity that's Pollyanna-ish and not real, but also not being fully in the other side of like, "Well, I know, but I get this adrenaline and, like, the warrior part in me or the anger part, I can attach to anger when I can still live in it, and be like, "Oh, let me repeat why my life sucks so bad."
Yeah, we hang on because it's familiar, but there's a
Yeah.
time I love that song, who is it? Who sings this? There's a time for peace, a time for love,
Oh,
a time
yeah.
for hate. That song,
Yes.
that's from the Ecclesiastics, actually. Did you know that?
Mhm. I
Ecclesiastes from the
did.
Bible. When
Mhm.
yeah, so and who sings that? Do you remember?
Mhm.
I had it in the first draft
Turn,
of my book.
turn, turn.
Turn, turn, turn. It's called Turn, Turn,
Yeah.
Turn. I had it in the first version of my book. I had a whole bunch of song lyrics in my book that I was told to take out. But yeah, so there's a time to feel, and then there's a time
Mhm.
to move forward,
Yeah.
right? So I'm not saying like, oh, we should always be stuck in the pain and we should always be
Yeah.
feeling all this stuff so deep. But there's value in that, and then there's value of moving forward. And then
Yeah,
we're
there's a
afraid to
season.
stay in it. We're
Mhm.
afraid to go there because maybe we don't see like a path forward. Like I was in the car
Mhm.
with my daughter recently, and, I cry a lot. I cry a lot in the car. And
Good.
music, gets me. Yeah,
Yes.
that's why I love music. It gets me. Uh, so she was like, "Oh, no, mom, it's okay. You don't have to cry." And I was like, "Oh, no, honey. Like, I need to cry, and that's okay. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna stay like this all day, right?
Right.
Like, I'm not gonna feel this all day. I'm gonna feel it, and then I'm gonna whatever process, I'm not even aware of what's going on all the time,
Mhm.
right? But I just something shifts and something changes and then something else catches my attention and it passes, right? So trusting
Mhm.
myself that I can feel and then allow it to pass. But I want to hit on before we move on about
Yeah.
the good change part. We use this example in the last 15 shows that we recorded and it was really good. So I wanted to bring it back up. Getting a promotion,
Mm.
right? Or like this good change that like it's good. It's good,
Mhm.
right? You're growing in your company, you're getting more money, but do you have to move, right? A lot of people have to move for their
Mhm.
jobs. Do you have to switch departments? Are you
Mhm.
working with different people? And you really loved the people that you were working with on a daily basis and now
Right, comfortable.
you're not talking to them on a daily basis. Um do you have to learn? You have to learn new stuff, right?
Mhm.
Now you're in a different position. So you have to let go of the way that you did things, your routine, your natural routine or maybe you got to go in earlier, or you got to go in later, or you got to switch your mode of transportation, whatever it is. It's like there's a million ways that things change when you get promotion. So looking at that as yes, it's a good thing, but there's still loss there that has to be processed.
Mhm.
Um, it's just like moving here. Like we moved from New York to Colorado, and I never questioned the move, but it was extremely painful because I went
Oh,
through
yeah.
a severe loss of identity. That was the
Mhm.
loss that was around it, the loss of the familiarity of just the muscle memory of turning on this street, just knowing where you are.
Yeah.
There's just so many big things and small things that come with moving. And ultimately, I never questioned it, like I said, but there was a lot of pain around.
Mhm.
People were mad, people were upset, people were
Mhm.
felt abandoned, people were like they didn't
Yes.
understand. Why would
That's
you
a
choose to not be here?
that's crazy you mentioned that because definitely experienced a bit of that too when we left New Mexico. Um, we also kept it I almost anticipated part of that happening too. We didn't tell anybody we were even thinking about doing it, but that goes to show you too, I was afraid, clearly. I knew what was gonna come from the other side of that.
Yeah.
We didn't tell anybody until we were, like, well on our way, like,
Mhm.
until a few days. We didn't say anything. So, again, and for me, because I'm like, I don't need anybody, trying to talk us out of it, because I was
Mm,
the same way of like, no, I know this is what we're meant to be. But I don't think I anticipated as many people, or the sense of people taking it as a personal hit to them, that we didn't
yeah,
want to be there with
yeah,
them, living life
yeah.
with it. Like, this isn't what it is. We're just trying, we need to go build our family unit, in a new chapter. I was like 18 months sober or whatever it was when we got here. It was like, no, we need to start this new chapter. But
Mhm.
there was like real, genuine hurt feelings. And I know that you can relate to that.
100%,
Mhm.
and some people still don't. Some people still don't understand. They still think it's about them. And I've kind of stopped trying to stop explaining, that this was
Convincing.
yeah, convincing and allowing people to just have whatever feelings they're gonna have around it,
Yeah.
because my convincing is the fear of loss. It all
Yeah.
goes back to, if I can't get this person to get on board with me or understand or whatever, are they gonna leave me? Are they gonna stop communicating
Yeah.
with me?
Are
You
they, if
know?
they're not comfortable, if they're not okay, if they're not comfortable with the situation, am I going to lose whatever, exchange, of love, energy, whatever it is? Am I gonna lose that exchange with them because, they're not comfortable with this situation? And
Mhm.
that's a what, and that's it, that is something to grieve, because
Totally.
golly, you sit there and and you wouldn't think of that. That's not something you would look at and think of that as grief, not out the gate. You're not gonna look at
Yeah.
that and think, "Oh, I'm having grief over this situation because of how it's playing out." We don't think of it like
Mhm.
that. It's like, "Oh,
Mhm.
maybe I'm frustrated, maybe I'm this or that." No, that's grief.
Yeah, and then it goes back to, is this person not going to love me?
Mhm.
Back to childhood, when
Yeah.
when even though those natural things like we talked about
Mhm.
doesn't mean necessarily that your parents don't love you, but when you're a kid from like 0 to 12, everything is about you. Everything is about
Yeah.
you. Everything your parents do, everything that happens, every fight, every this, every that. For some reason, children, it's just a psychology. It goes back to, what did I do wrong? If I was a
Mhm.
better little girl, maybe my parents would stay married. If I was, stuff like that. So it's just the nature of psychology, but it
Yeah.
travels with us into our 30s, 40s, 50s. It's just like a natural feeling that comes up. So to recognize it and then also be okay with it, right? Like, maybe that
Yes.
person's never going to understand.
Yes.
And that's the risk that you have to take when you're, true to yourself, is risk losing
Mhm.
some people
Yeah.
and saying, like, I'm going to be okay. And it doesn't mean that I'm unlovable. It doesn't mean that I'm unworthy,
And it
because
doesn't mean I can't still have love for them. Right?
exactly.
Like, it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that I have to all of a sudden draw this line in the sand of like,
Yes.
well, if I do this, it means I don't love them. No, that's not the case. But you're right. There's that part of our mind that's like, yes, but this person has led me to believe before that if I take these actions, or their emotional response to me before has been, when I take these actions, that I am
They
harming
withhold,
them.
or they
Yeah.
withhold.
Or they
They withhold their
withhold.
love
Yeah.
from me if I don't
Yes.
do what they want me to do.
Yes. And what a crazy deal that we've done that probably for generations without anybody ever recognizing that that's was going on, you know?
Yeah.
And I think you're
Yeah.
right. We're at a time right now, at a different generation. We're in that, telling you, man, I'm convinced Gen X, we're the bridge. Cause you're Gen X too, right? Are you
Yeah.
Gen
I'm like on
X?
the cusp of millennial, I think,
Yeah. You're
1980.
more Gen X. You're Gen
Oh,
X.
I'm so Gen X. I mean, do you see what I'm wearing? I'm so Gen
Hello.
X. Come on. And I had my hat on too, but
I
I took
know,
that off.
you're
I took that off
perfect.
for you guys.
I loved it. But I think we are in so many ways, we're the bridge. We're such a bridge. And
We
a
are, and that's why it's
bunch
painful. It's a
Yeah,
painful
man.
generation to be in,
We got
because we're
one
breaking a lot
foot
of
in.
this.
Yeah, we got one foot in an old way, and we've got one foot in the new way, and
Yeah.
a
It
lot
takes a
of it.
lot of consciousness. Like, we have to be
Jeez.
very aware. Like the other night, well, a couple of weeks ago, I like threw like a hissy fit. Like, I don't even know what it was. I was talking about something and I felt like my family was like ganging up on me and I don't even know what it was. And I was like, well, if you don't need me, then I'm just gonna go to bed. And I like went upstairs
Yeah.
and it was like 8 o'clock and I like shut my door. And I'm like, I'm
Did
just
you
gonna read and go to
slam
bed.
it? Did you
I
slam
didn't
it?
slam it
Good
because
job.
I don't like the sound of a slammed door. So I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
slam it.
So
But I did come back out 10 minutes later and be like, after all I do for you.
Look at me. You still needed to come back out. I
But
did.
you're everything I do. I had to prove my point as to why I'm leaving, why I'm
Yeah.
walking away, why
Well,
I'm
yeah.
going to withhold myself
Ah,
from you,
yes.
why I'm going to take myself, right? Silent treatment. That's I don't do I can't not talk, so I'm not really good with the silent treatment. But that's another way of withholding love
Is
because
another way too. Mhm.
we're feeling like hurt. So you hurt me, now
Right.
I'm gonna hurt you. And that brings it to like this whole idea of like, hurt people. So like when we're not understanding that when I was in that moment, not understanding that what I
Mhm.
was feeling was loss. I was
Mm.
feeling abandoned by my
Mhm.
family.
Right.
It came out sideways. And I
Mhm.
felt like I needed to hurt them in some way. And this is just brutal honesty, people.
Yeah.
This is what we do on this show. We're human,
Yeah, and we
right?
need
I'm
to
human.
because, yeah, I mean, there are times, right? Well, and that's part of little bit segue, but not even a segue, but that's what eclipses are for too. That we can look at our dark
Let's talk
that
about
are
that.
yeah, it's an eclipse today. We're having a lunar eclipse, which the moon represents our feminine energy and all that good stuff.
Oh
The
yeah.
sun represents masculine, but I've heard a lot of talk and it has hit me in a good way here lately. Some of it caused me to, stumble, but looking at accepting our shadow selves and knowing that part of the human experience is that we're going to have this side of us, like the dark side of the moon, that
Mhm.
comes from places of being abandoned, that comes from places of being, some of us are narcissistic and we don't know it. Some of us are, you know what I mean? We take these we're avoidant, we're whatever it is, we're people pleasers, we're all these
Mhm.
things that a lot of the time is like, well, no, it's not really no. And instead of embracing in a way, like and saying, it's all right that I
Mhm.
threw it, for instance, and I'm using you as an example, I could probably pull up 10 for myself right now, but okay, that came out sideways,
Mhm.
and being like that came out sideways that I felt really hurt and that I needed to like put that on my family at that
Mhm.
moment because I felt like they were hurting me.
Mhm.
And instead of which I mean, you're healthy in that way that I'm sure you didn't, but probably a part of you was like, "Oh, man," a little bit of, like, wincing at ourselves for being like, "Oh god, that was not my best
Oh yeah, no, I
moment,"
knew it.
right?
Like 5 minutes. It lasted like 5 minutes. And
Right,
then I
like,
went
"That was
out
not my
and I
best
was
moment."
like, yeah, and I like, called my daughter up into my room and I was like, this is not about you.
Yeah,
I'm upset with daddy, blah, 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 blah,
right.
blah. Cause I felt like he was like egging them on. And it was
Yes.
probably joking. I think they were like joking, but I was
Right,
in a very hormonal, like very, and not just
right.
blaming. I'm not going to say like, oh, it's hormonal and I was a woman and all
But
that.
that
Like I
doesn't
was
help.
genuinely
Shit.
hurt, but that doesn't help exactly.
Ooh,
Like
it doesn't help.
we have this like idea that if we talk about hormones and we're like devaluing the feminine, but it's not that. It's not like, oh, I'm just a bitch because she's hormonal. That is devaluing.
Right.
It's acknowledging that that is actually going on within me and
Yeah.
honoring that
Yes,
and
that's what I
saying,
mean, honoring the dark side, because some of it we hear dark and it's like, we hear dark and it's like, "Oh, that's the bad, that's the evil, that's the this." No, it's like, to me and thinking about that, those sides of us, we can't ever be complete if we're not figuring out how to try to avoid that part of ourselves, but really embrace it and say, "Let me
yes.
look at why." And you did, right?
Mhm.
Like that night you sat there
Yeah.
going,
Oh yeah.
"Ooh, where did
Yeah.
this
And
come
then it was
from?"
over. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
like,
it
where
was
did
very intense. But, like,
woo.
yeah, like that what you're talking about is the fact that, like, loss is just as much a part of life or painful feelings and
Mm,
dark energy, dark
mhm,
feel dark, emotions, heavy emotions are just as much a
more
part of
dense.
life as love and joy and
Yeah.
excitement and happiness. It's a spectrum. We are human beings on a
Mhm.
spectrum of emotion.
Oh,
So if
yeah.
I'm shutting down that one part of pain and loss and
Mhm.
grief, I'm shutting down the joy. It's just
Absolutely.
there's a great quote, and I wanna read it to you guys, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna read it so that I have it here so that I got it right. It's by Anna White.
Mm.
A friend sent this to me when I was deep in my grief about my brother.
Mhm.
It says, "It is the capacity to feel consuming grief and pain and despair that also allows me to embrace love and joy and beauty with my whole heart." And I had never thought of feelings or emotions in that way. I didn't realize that if I didn't allow myself to go to that end of the spectrum, that I couldn't feel this end of the spectrum.
Think of a pendulum swinging, and it's like it goes from this side to that side,
Yep.
and if you're stopping the momentum because it's for whatever, if we're stopping the momentum of having it go to whatever height it is, that's
Mhm.
going to slow down the momentum of where it goes on the opposite side. You're
Yes.
exactly right. So our capacity, they mirror each other. Our capacity to be able to, if we're avoiding the pain, I think of what I'm hearing you correct is that if we're avoiding the pain to a degree, we're also avoiding the love to a degree.
Yes.
If we're avoiding the
100%.
grief to a
Yep.
degree, we're avoiding the joy to a
Yes.
degree too.
A 100%. I like how you talked about, like, how you just said that. You're interrupting the flow of your own, like, humanity and spirit and everything that you're supposed to be in alignment with. Like, you are basically just dropping the hammer and saying, "No, I'm not gonna allow that to happen." And you're only hurting yourself.
Hmm.
I'm only hurting myself when I don't allow myself to go or I avoid or my defense mechanisms pop up. Sometimes there's really healthy denial as well.
Yeah,
Sometimes denial keeps us safe, it keeps us alive, right? So again, there's a
for
time
sure.
and you can judge that, right? Can I go into this? Can I not? Am I not in the headspace? Is this really going to affect other people around me in a negative way? Should I save this for later? Whatever it is, right? You can be the judge of that. But as long as you're being honest with yourself. Um, and, like, going into the whole spectrum is really it's a way of becoming as whole as possible on any given
Hmm.
day, right? Or on our journey toward wholeness. And it's all part of your spiritual evolution or your emotional evolution, your spiritual
Hmm.
ascension, however you want to look at it. And then tapping into all these different emotions on the spectrum is what's going to make you the most aligned with the earth and the planet, right? Because the moon cycles, right? You're talking about the moon cycles. We go through a series of cycles. We're not just one way and then we stay that way forever. We have this like idea, this thing pisses me off. We have this idea in society that like we're always supposed to be happy. Everything's supposed to be great. And if we're not and everything's not great, then there's a problem. What's the
Hmm.
problem? What's going on? Oh, are they going to talk about me if I say that that I'm going through something, right? Like we all try to have. We have this like not
The
all, a lot
mask.
of people
Yeah.
have this facade and it kills me. Like no, like I'm sorry.
Goes
Listen, it can't.
against our origins, I think. It goes against what we organically, um, probably part of it, again, back in the day when we talk about it how many times, but part of those things kept us alive in simpler facets, right? Now they end up coming about in a way where it's like, yeah, we have all these facades and armor and things because we live in a world where it's like we've really, really been convinced we need a lot of things outside of us in order to feel level, including people's approval of us.
Well, yeah,
Like,
that's
we
a
need a
huge one. And
lot
I
of
was going
shit
to say
outside of us.
yes, yes, it's huge. And I was also going to say including just people.
Yeah.
Like another huge period of grief that I don't think people realize is grief is just different stages of life, specifically your
Mhm.
children's development, right?
That
Children
can mess you up, man, when you do not even see it coming. I've not been one of those people until about, and oh, of course, you're like, "Oh, I remember." I have been a disaster here the last year where pictures of Sandy are popping up or pictures of Steel, and I'm like, "Oh my
mhm.
god." Like, it's this, but what I find, I yes, as much as I miss, "Oh my god, am I gonna miss them as this," it's about me too, because 'cause I'm like, "Oh god, they were that little at that time, and could I have done better as a parent
Yes,
during that
yep,
time?"
I just had that feeling this morning.
Ugh.
Somebody was telling me about a friend that's going through something with their children, and
Mhm.
I was like, "Wait, but did I also, like did I make, every vacation or every packing for something, like, I
Mhm.
feel like there's always a stress or the holidays. Did I make
Crazy
the
level.
holidays, like, stressful and, like, create this, like, negative memory?" I actually asked my kids the other day, I said, "Guys, be really honest with me." I was like, "Be really, really honest with me. Like, I can take it, whatever you
Yeah.
say. When you think back on those
Mhm.
times, what do you remember? Like, how do you feel? What's, like, your overall sense? Does it feel,
Mhm.
like, happy and fun, or does it feel like, heavy or, like, sad?"
Mhm.
And, Lila said at first, my oldest one, because she probably remembers more, she was
Right.
like, "A little of both," you know? And I was
Really?
like yeah, she was like,
That's
A little of
honest,
both."
right?
I was
It's
like, "Thank
honest.
you for your honesty." Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
and you're teaching them that it's safe, by the way, to, like, be honest because, again, I don't know, I think in with us going through that, I think had I been asked that question and given maybe that response, it probably would have been like, really? For everything? I mean, not necessarily to my parents, but in general, right? Like, I would stay up all night to make that shit happen for you guys.
Yeah. Yeah,
It
yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
amazing,
Yeah,
but again, right? We
exactly.
make it
About
about,
us.
and you grieve because you go, did I lose, for me, what
That
I catch
time.
myself, did I lose the time, the opportunity? Because again, everyone kept telling me, just it goes so fast and take it all in. And I was like,
Mhm.
really? I haven't
Yeah, I
slept in
was
two
like,
years.
this part could go really fast.
I'm like,
Like,
this
it was
sucks.
hard.
It was freaking
Yeah,
hard. It
yeah,
was
and
hard.
it's yeah.
And
But
grieving,
yet,
yeah.
you still look back with
Mhm.
nostalgia, and
Of
you say, "Oh,
course.
that was so you look at pictures, and that was great," but,
And we're meant
and
to. I think we're meant to
yeah.
forget a lot of the really hard, because I don't think we'd have more than
Yes.
one child if we d
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, yeah, speaking about, like, holidays too, I mean, holidays were a huge time, like, we were
Ugh.
actually taping this back in January, and we were
Yeah.
gonna talk more about what happens, like, letdown after a holiday or, like, a big celebration or, and what I learned recently is that there is more dopamine released in the anticipation of an event than at the actual event.
You told me that, and that shit blew my mind. Like, you were saying even planning for a vacation, that somehow the planning for causes more dopamine than, like, the event itself, and that you can come sometimes be left with, like, this, "Well, what the heck? Like, this wasn't all the things I dreamed it up to
Yeah,
be, or didn't go like I anticipated," and then
yeah.
we're in a state of grief.
And then afterwards, you get that again, that even less dopamine.
Yep.
And but then you're also it's the dopamine, but then it's also related to then your thought process, right? Of
Mhm.
whoa, exactly. Like, well, that wasn't as good as I thought it was gonna be.
Right.
Your thoughts can just kind of keep that going. It can keep that like story going instead of saying, like, well, it was what it was and now it's over. Right.
Mhm.
A wedding. I feel like that probably happens a lot around
Oh, man.
weddings.
Because the
Yeah.
plan, oh my gosh, the buildup.
Yes. The
The
buildup, the
buildup.
expectation. There's so
God.
much expectation around these big events, and then they very rarely so it's like, again, back to the control.
Mhm.
Instead of planning everything to, like, the nth degree and expecting it to go the way that it's gonna be so great, it's gonna feel so good, just
Mhm.
allowing these events and things to unfold. Like, of course, we have to plan. I'm not saying, like, never plan. Of course, you have to plan for stuff.
If you don't have a plan, or no, what is it? Tom always says it.
If you plan to fail
Failing
if you fail
failing
to
to
plan,
plan
you
is
fail if
planning to fail. Yeah.
there you go.
Failing to plan is planning to fail.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
you do need a plan, but not
Mhm.
down to like the micromanaging of like, what color socks am I going to wear on the fourth day of my trip? Right. Like we could get really, I know I can anyway, get like really, sorry, my hair is like bothering me. I can get like really crazy about stuff. Like instead of just throwing like four shirts and four pairs of pants, like everything's got to be like this day I'm going to wear this and then that night I'm going to wear that. Like I get really like kind of crazy with stuff, but, surprise. But, yeah, it's, I'm getting better. I'm definitely getting better with releasing the control and,
We
it's
all
all
got
just
those things. And you
yes, we
know
all
what? It's funny, not funny. It's interesting you should bring it up. And I think it's probably good because there's probably people out there listening to this. And not that obviously you're not in this scenario or this situation, but I was talking to a fellow coworker, well, not even coworker, not that I work directly with, but over the show that I had to do, that whole trade show last week,
uh-huh, uh-huh.
who and she kind of came off very, at first sight, you'd be like, "Oh, this girl is very aloof. She's like not into." I'm like, "Does she hate her job? Does she hate like what she's doing? What's going on?" Very kind of like detached from things, right? And then in talking to her, coming to realize she was somebody who explained to me that she has had OCD, but like OCD, legit, like diagnosable OCD from the time she was a child, and talking about, she was just specifically talking about grieving the fact of not being that way, figuring out that not everybody lived that way. Like she was
Mm,
like, she's like, I mean, but I was, and at the time, she's like, our parents, again, right? Back to our parents, not really knowing how to deal with that. She's like, my parents didn't understand why. And she was at the point of like, everything was done in tens. She had to flip the switch 10 times. If she hugged you, she had to pat you 10 times. I mean, everything. And she said, I remember feeling really sad when I realized that not everybody felt things that way. You know what I mean? Like in that
mhm,
manner.
So
Like
is it
she
like her feeling different? Like she felt like she was different and then that's a grief in and of itself
Yes.
that you don't fit
Yes.
into a larger collective?
Exactly, and that people weren't having the weight of that on them like she was. Like, she was like,
Mm,
she said it was a strange and she literally said, "There was a part of me in her late teens," I think she said, in, like, early adulthood that was grieving, "Well, why can't I fricking just" you know what I mean? Like, that person doesn't have to fight turning the switch off 10 times. What the fuck is up with that? Like, why do I have to be that way? And it
yes.
just again, I'm sure there's people out there that with whatever it might be, with we all have not all of us, some of us suffer with anxiety, on
Yeah.
different levels, right? Like of
Yeah.
different things.
Yes.
So
Well, that's
it's
what control
okay
is all
to
about.
anxiety.
Yeah, I don't wanna, like, digress too much, but
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
that's what control is all about. So if I can control everything and know everything is gonna be where it's supposed to be and is gonna
Mhm.
go off without a hitch the way it's supposed to,
Mhm.
then, um, my anxiety will be less because I know that there's gonna be no problems, there's gonna be no confrontation, there's gonna be no feeling pain. There's gonna be
Right.
no feeling a letdown or a lack of expectation that I let somebody down or that that person is upset with me, right? Like
Mhm.
constantly managing. We're like constantly managing this fear of loss because then if this person is upset with me, then it's going to change our relationship, right?
Right.
So that's kind of what it all comes down to. But that's a
Yeah.
very interesting. Never thought of it that way. Of
Or
like
like the grief of it. Like that was which I'm sure and
maybe
then some of
that's
us go ahead.
Sorry, maybe that's why we're afraid to be authentic. Maybe that's why
Yeah.
people struggle so hard being authentic because if I don't fit into the mold that you think I should fit into, right? If I don't think like you, right? Like she's neurodivergent, right? I guess
Yeah.
her thinking is different. If
Yes.
I'm different in that way, then you're not going to love me, you're not going to accept me, you're not going to validate me, I'm not going to be worthy, I'm not going to be
Yeah.
lovable. It all goes back to
Well,
this fear of loss of
fear
people and relationships.
and acceptance, well, and not to mention anybody who's and I only bring it up because if you're somebody who's out there who is neurodivergent or you just don't think yourself to fit in the mold, then it might be something that might come up as grief for you and you don't know it, right? This is just one of
Mhm.
those another one of those many faces, right, of grief. They talk about that even if somebody, for instance, who's got ADHD, like the truth of the matter is, a kid by the age of I think it's 10 by the age of 10 who has ADHD just because of their impulses, um, hears 20,000 more negative comments about who they are than an individual who's not neurodivergent.
Because like humanity is just like dead set on this way of how things have to go. And
Yes.
this all goes into like the patriarchy and,
Mm,
all that kind of stuff and the system and the
yeah.
structure. And I mean, we could take that to like a whole different episode.
Mhm.
But yes, it's all about fitting in to this mold of how it's supposed to be. That's why it's a really brave thing that you and I both chose to move
Yeah.
because that's not a common thing. Like most people thought we
No.
moved for work. Most people move across the country or halfway across for work, right?
Right.
We chose to do that just because it was what our soul was calling us to do. And when you follow those soul callings and your authenticity and you become more aligned, you're going to have to experience loss. It's just a part of it. When you are your true self,
Yep.
there are going to be people who are not going to be riding that wave with you and are going to be threatened by it. They're going to be hurt by it and they're going to pull away. But it's what we have to do.
We may not know grief comes from those types of scenarios. We may not know that that's what that is, that we don't have to be afraid. We can grieve. We can be s we
Exactly.
can be sad for
Yes.
it, but and we don't have to say, "Okay, well, by me deciding to grieve this means that I'm accepting that it's ended or that things are different." It's like, no, you can grieve it, be sad about it, or, do whatever it is, feel that sense of loss without having to be terrified that this is how it will be forevermore. That
Exactly.
you can move through it
And
versus
that
avoid it.
those Yeah, and grief doesn't always mean over and done and
Mhm.
gone, right? That I'm
Mhm.
necessarily losing something. It's interesting because grief and loss go very much together, but
Mhm.
maybe they don't. Like maybe grief can come just from a change. You're not really maybe you're losing, maybe I guess you look at it as you're losing the way a certain relationship was,
Mhm.
but maybe the change of that relationship is actually going to benefit both parties even more, just
Right.
getting honest about the relationship. Like I've had people like ghost me, right? Like I've had
Mhm.
people that like were close to me, like one girl in particular just like fell off the face of the earth, like, wouldn't return my calls. I think I was blocked. I mean, I don't even know what happened. I still don't
Oh,
know to this
wow.
day what happened. And then I have, like, another friend who was pulling away, and I tried to, like, keep getting her back, keep
Mhm,
trying, "Hey, let's get together. Hey, da, da, da," And, we did once, and it just was obvious that she just for whatever reason, I don't take it personally, it is what it is, she just pulled away, and I had to accept that, and I had to let these people go instead of
mhm.
trying to chase them and make them
To
want to
fix
be
it.
in my life to fix it. Again, goes back to the people pleasing, the needing the validation, because if I truly accept the fact that these people are not interested in me,
Mhm.
that hurts.
It
It hurts.
does. It does. It
But
does. And I find myself still I mean, there's people who yeah, I find myself I did it just a couple weeks ago with somebody who, and again, you've got this, like, whatever it is, if it's a friendship from that spans 30 years or whatever it is, and realizing I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna call and leave a message," even though I'm like, wow, I'm like, this is like year 7 of this person not once returning one of the phone calls. You know what I mean? But I'm still like, every now and again, get this like, but I'm just gonna let him know, thinking about him. Like, I'm all, it's okay that there's a good chance this person, and it may not be about me. It may have nothing to do with me, but I don't fit
yeah,
into their world anymore.
exactly,
And the
exactly. It doesn't have to be
value,
this big, bad, like, terrible thing, and that
no, I
I'm, like,
just
this
find,
terrible person or whatever. It's just the way the world turns
yeah, and that
for
they don't
people.
have, I've become more, I think I've become a little more understanding on this end now where becoming aware of my own energy, like banks and my own energy level of like, as I'm aging, right? I'm somebody who's, like, empathic, where, oh my god, I was, like, my energy everywhere, let me fix everything all the time, like, that was my deal, and finally realizing now, like, they may just not have the space or that energy for me, and I don't need to own that
Yeah,
and take it as a
yeah.
personal hit. However, it's kind of the first thing we do, like, what is
Mhm,
it about me that wasn't enough for them to wanna share some of that energy, their energy with me anymore? Like, I thought we had this connection or whatever it is, and it's
mhm.
like, they might just be fucking exhausted, like a lot of
Yeah,
the people in life right now trying to figure out
or
how to,
just our lives just went in different paths. Like,
yeah,
maybe
which
there's
is
some people that
okay.
you're friends with because your kids go to the same school, or you go to
Right.
the same church, or you go to the same gym, or you go to
Yeah.
whatever it is, right? And you're just kinda like, you see each other a lot and you're
Mhm.
friends and whatever, and then life takes a turn, or somebody moves and then they get,
Mhm.
different, friends, or they just grow, right? Like, growing
Mhm.
spiritually, doing the work, like the stuff we're talking about. We start to, like, go to different levels or wavelengths or whatever you wanna call them, right? And
Mhm.
that naturally is going to force you to leave certain people behind. So maybe
Right.
those people were moving in a different direction in their life where I
Mhm.
just didn't fit into the equation anymore,
Right.
and that's okay. And the most compassionate thing that I can do for myself and for them is to let them go
Right.
instead of
Just let
trying to
it
hold
be
on. Yeah,
and
instead of trying to
attach all
hold on to
the
something.
to attach any of the, well, why? Like, because that's what I find myself, that's what I found myself doing, like, how weird that I've known, like you were saying, I've known this person for how many decades now, and, like, how weird that they wouldn't even think to just respond with a text message, or, and you sit there and go, "Well, why? Or what did I do? So what happened? Did I do something?" And then you
Well,
start
as
running the
humans, I think
adult
that's
thing.
natural.
Yeah.
As humans, it's like we're constantly thinking about ourselves. But then going
Mhm.
back to, like, the childhood thing too, right? Is
Right.
like whenever anything happened, it was always about us, right? So maybe
Yes.
that had been so that psychological part that we're supposed stage that we're supposed to grow out of. Maybe some
Mhm.
of us have not completely grown out of, or those
Yeah.
neural pathways have been carved so deeply that it takes that's what maturing means.
Yeah.
That's what becoming an adult, that's what becoming emotionally mature and emotionally intelligent is about, is saying, I'm
Right.
not a child anymore, and I cannot respond like I was a child anymore,
Mhm.
because that's all about me. And it's not all about us anymore. It's
No.
not. If you
Mm-mm.
want to be I see a lot of shirts and bumper stickers, be a good human, right? If you want to be a good human out there in the world, you have to be thinking about people other than yourself. So
Mhm.
instead of saying, well, why did this person leave me? Why did they leave me? How about that's what they needed for themselves?
Right.
And I'm happy for them. I'm happy. I'm thrilled that they ghosted me because that's what they need for themselves.
And
They need
they
some
created a
lesson.
boundary. Yeah, they did something that they needed to do for them, which was better for them. Yeah.
Yes. And if I can get to a place of this ultimate unconditional self worth and unconditional self love,
Mhm.
whoever leaves is not going to rock my world
That's
as
right.
much. Like, it's gonna hurt, right? I'm not saying I'm gonna be like this, like, floating above, like Dalai Lama, like everything's great, but like I can move past that. I can understand it and I can
Yeah.
go more quickly into that feeling of that's what they needed to do for them. And I
Acceptance.
respect it and I
Mhm,
accept it
mhm.
and it's okay because it's not all about me all the time. And maybe,
Right.
and maybe it was about me. Maybe they don't like me, right? Maybe I've changed. Maybe I'm a different person. Maybe they don't like some of the decisions that I've made in my life. That's okay too.
Mhm.
That's okay. I
We
don't
don't
have to
need
be a
everybody
puddle
to
on the
be
floor.
okay. Yeah. We don't need everybody to be okay with the choices we made for our own journey.
And that's a very hard place of power to stand in. To
It
stand in
is.
that power, to stand in like I did what I needed to do for me and whoever doesn't get on board or understand that, like it's sad, it's hard, it's grief
Mhm,
again, right? We try to avoid it at all costs, but you're gonna get through it. You're gonna move
mhm.
through it. Like he said before, it's just for right now. I have a spot one of
Right.
my sponsors, she says, it's just for right now.
Because
Like
it's the
we get
truth.
caught, right? We get caught in this like, oh, it's gonna be like this forever. It's gonna be like this forever.
Well, like we
It's
talked
not.
about, you know, we we don't sit there when we go to the beach and put our feet in the ocean, and as we're sitting there and watching the wave come towards us and it hits our feet, we don't sit there with all this angst like, "Oh god, what's gonna happen when the wave leaves?" Because we know there's another one coming. Like
Exactly.
the natural
Maybe a
cycle
better
of
wave, maybe a better wave,
maybe a better
right?
word. And it's I don't know, if you think about it, it's almost like the whole it's a reflection of the way our whole universe works. Like there's just about, I mean, obviously the seasons change, but even with what we just had, we had the equinox where there was equal night and equal day.
Mhm,
It's like, and
mhm.
we have to have both in order
Yeah,
to rest, to grow, to nurture. We are a whole, we are spiritual beings, I think, having a human experience. And in that, we are a complete piece. And there's going to be these times of grief that come up, right? I mean, there's times I think we don't even realize there's times where we might even be grieving an idea we had of something or like,
totally. A
"Hey,
fantasy, a wish, an
fantasy."
idea. Yep,
Yes. Like, "Hey, but I watched all the rom-coms and when I get married, it was supposed to be like this." And then, "Oh, it's not that. Oh, no." Like in this sense of grief and then all of a sudden being literally just taken off your feet in a
mhm,
way
mhm.
because some something didn't turn out the way we've been led to believe it should. That's a sense of grief too.
Totally,
Where you sit there and
totally.
if you don't know that that's what it is, we can certainly hang on to something and be very upset and resentful and feel like we've been cheated,
Mhm.
instead of being like, oh, wow, that was an idea of something that I thought should be in place or thought things should have been a certain way. It's okay that it's not. I'm allowed to grieve, be sad, um, grieve the idea of it, and then realize it's okay. I can let it go, move on to the next thing. Because I
We
think,
can't ever fully let go or accept anything if we don't go through the grief process, right? That's
no,
like the whole they say 5, that's there are 7 now, and I think there are even more. Anyway, that's the last one, even though they kind of all can go in between, but acceptance. You have to go through the denial, you have to go through the anger, you have to go the bargaining, the whatever, the depression, and then, the acceptance. So it's like it's all you can't you're not gonna be the one to figure it out, to say, "I'm just gonna skip over all those steps and get to that good place."
and be fine
Not
and
gonna
genuinely
happen.
be fine and genuinely think you're good about it because it's the odds are that that's not the case, and you do
No.
have to go through those and it's interesting because it's almost like, you think of the same way you're playing a video game or something, like, you have to get through certain stages to get to the next stage, and
Mhm.
there's probably a
Yeah.
lot of things and grief specifically, you're right, there's a process to grief, and if we don't recognize it as being grief,
Mhm.
we're not gonna give ourselves, the permission or like the freedom to go ahead and go through the stages of it because we
Yeah.
don't even identify it as, oh, well, that's not grief. That's just something else. That's just me being
Yeah.
whatever. No, it's actually
Yeah.
grief.
It is. And recognizing it, feeling it, healing it, doing all of that kind of stuff, it's going to change you. It's going, like we're saying, it's going to help you grow into like a more evolved human being, which is why every single one of us is here right now.
Oh, yeah.
So how like can we do this, right? Okay, this is all great and I should grieve, blah, blah, blah. But how can we do this? My therapist taught me a great idea, concept. It's called the good griever, being a good griever.
Hmm.
being a good griever, it kind of correlates to the idea of impermanence, the Buddhist idea of impermanence, which means
Mhm.
that nothing is forever, right? That everything comes and everything goes, and that's just how life is, right? So being a
Nature.
good, yeah, not the nature of things. You look at nature, like things are birthed and then they die, and then they're birthed and then they die. It's
Every
just the
year.
cycle of life and
Mhm.
nature and humanity and what we're doing here. So being a good griever is the idea is that you can embrace, almost like envision it like a circle. Like you can embrace people, places, things, ideas, whatever it is, um, and embrace it wholeheartedly and be
Mhm.
completely there, completely attached, completely emotionally available,
Mhm.
all in it with yourself and others, and then let it go.
Mhm.
And then embrace the next and then let it go. And the way that I do that is by understanding and accepting that everything ends, that everything will go.
Good
So
or
if I
bad.
don't, good or bad, except good or bad, right? This too shall pass,
Mhm.
good or bad. Not with this like fixed idea of like, this is mine, it's mine forever. Right.
Mhm.
Because then I get really super attached to something and it makes it really hard to let it go.
Yeah.
So being attached yet unattached is really, it takes practice. It's really a skill to be honed. So it's like feeling something completely and then knowing this thing most likely is not going to stay with me forever. And I'm
Mhm.
okay with that. Making an agreement with myself in
Mhm.
whatever situations I'm in that when this thing leaves me, because most likely everything will in some capacity, right?
Right.
Um, Right, like your kid's going off to college
Yeah.
or the holidays over or whatever, like
Mhm.
knowing that that thing is gonna eventually come to an end, and I'm gonna be okay with that. Instead of holding on so tightly to this, like, feeling of, uh, connection, and there's of course, we wanna
Mhm.
have that connection, but knowing that when it leaves, I'm still okay. I'm still gonna be okay. That's the beauty of experiencing grief, is that you have that growth process of coming home to yourself.
Mhm.
Because guess what you always do have? Yourself
Right.
and God,
Mhm.
if you believe in God.
And that
Those are the
that
only 2 things,
connection.
and it's the same thing, yourself and God is the same thing, but yes,
It's the same thing, and it's as you were saying that, it made me think about how why it's so easy for us to not think about, like, imagine how stressed out and thank God, right? Again, the universe, God, the way we've been created in this, like, perfect way. If we stressed out about every breath we let out because, "Oh God," like, we wouldn't be able to even take the next breath in without letting that breath out, and it
gotta let one go
sustains.
to let one come in,
Period.
right?
Like, period, and thank God. Could you imagine if we were stressed out about every breath we let go? Because holy shit, we wouldn't be alive.
We wouldn't
But
be able to function.
no, we
We
wouldn't be
wouldn't
able to
function.
function, and it would be amazing, obviously, because 'cause they're bigger things, but there's gotta be a part of us, I'm sure, through meditation and exactly what you're talking about. I mean, obviously, there's a whole religious practice with Buddhism that reflects around the idea. How wonderful would that be if we could get closer to it being that natural as us breathing in and out, of not attaching to the exterior,
Material, even
yeah,
like people, like
yeah,
anything, everything is gonna
yeah,
go except your
yeah,
soul. So, like, the idea behind the impermanence in Buddhism is like, it makes the most sense to grow your soul into the most enlightened spirit possible
yeah,
because that's the only thing that stays with you ever
yeah,
in the next life. And then I believe in reincarnation and then that soul is the only thing that's going to go with you. So
mhm,
doing this kind of work we're talking about is so
right,
valuable
yep,
because you are learning how to grow that soul into the
mhm,
most loving, compassionate, kind-hearted person that you can be, which is ultimately the goal for every
yeah,
human.
it is, and
My
I think
goal, it's my
it's
goal.
for sure, and it also the more, authentic we can be in that and the more concentrated that part of our soul is, the more of an imprint we can leave on the blueprint here when we do go,
Exactly. That's what it's
you
all
know?
about, people. It's not about us. It's not
Yeah.
about us. We're just the vessels, right,
Mhm.
of making this place a little bit better than when we got here,
Yeah,
like,
the
leaving it better
evolution
than
of
when we
the
got here.
whole thing. We get to be here at a time, I don't know, like, you think about that, we're like a fraction, we're a little speck, but to
A
think of us
speck.
being broken
A
down into
speck.
yeah, little tiny speck compared I mean, even if you think of just how long as humans, we've been here. The dinosaurs had us. Are you kidding me? They're like, I'm sure they were like, ha ha, you guys are hilarious with all your overthinking shit. We were
Yes.
there for 10 million years ago,
Yeah.
taken out by a comet.
Yeah.
Like, very, very much so that the more we can start to do that and allow ourselves to recognize grief when, I don't know, maybe it's something that we wouldn't see as grief. We can maybe practice a little more every day of letting ourselves go through those stages of the grief.
Yeah, so, like, in the next week or so, try and be conscious of, where that feeling is coming up of, like, a sadness. It could really kind of just, I
Yeah.
think, kinda present as a sadness or a, "Oh, that stinks." That I feel like is the key of, "Wait, is there grief and loss here?" Like, your favorite store closing, right? A lot of
Mm.
stores are closing, everything's going online, that's sort of
Yes.
just the way it's going. Um or, they stopped making this pair of shoes that I love. Like something stupid as that,
Yeah.
right? Like, and simple as that. It's not stupid because it matters to you and it's
Mhm.
giving you the opportunity to tap in to this stuff.
Mhm.
So use everything that's around you, everything in your life, every experience you're having is trying to teach you something.
Yeah.
So use those moments of, "Oh, that stinks, man. I really liked that restaurant,"
Mhm.
Say, "All right, listen, you don't have to be this big drawn out thing, but just express or to yourself at least, acknowledge and say, that really stinks. And I really, I'm, not just go straight to, well, let's go to that restaurant. Well, that restaurant's
Right.
good. Yeah. You get to that at some point. But before you get to the what restaurant next are we going to go to,
Mhm.
you have to sit in it and say, "Y that that really kinda stinks,"
Let yourself be sad, let yourself be
Yeah,
mad. Again, the stages,
you could
right?
be mad, you could be
Mhm.
sad. Yeah, and then, like, sit in that for a little bit, maybe a few minutes or whatever it is when it's
Mhm.
something that minute, and then, "Okay, well, I can let it go, and the next oh, look, that restaurant just popped up around the corner, let's try that, because that's the evolution of life is change, right?
Mhm.
So you don't get stuck, like we're saying. That's just like an example. Just let yourself feel. That's really all it is. There's no
Yeah.
big process here. Let yourself feel and
Don't
then move
don't try
forward.
to avoid it all and let yourself go through those healthy point, and again, yeah, we don't have to stay there too long, but to let yourself go through, like, yeah, it's alright that you're grieving this because if it was the pair of shoes, well, you started getting those when you were a senior in high school and they've always been comfortable, and
Yeah.
now all of a sudden it's like, "Wait a minute, like, those can't be gone. What are you talking about?" Or a
Yeah.
store or whatever it is, a
Yeah.
restaurant, and go back to tying to, well, why is this that I'm really actually pretty sad about this?" Well, it's because of this, and then
There
let
was an
yourself.
emotional connection.
Yeah,
Usually there was some kind of emotional
almost
connection
always.
or made you feel safe, the
Mhm.
familiarity, the
Yeah.
comfort, whatever it is. That's
Mhm.
what it really is, Ginny. You just hit the
Yep.
nail on the head.
Yeah.
It's this, well, we always went there. Oh, we always loved it there. We felt
Mhm.
at home there. It felt
Yeah.
like, we knew the people. We knew it's the emotional connection, and then realizing that, yes, that is sad and that does suck, but the emotional connection, this doesn't really even need to leave. You can keep the energetic
Yeah.
connection going.
Right.
And then there's gonna be something new people and a new
Mhm.
place that you're going to then feel connected to.
Mhm. And you'll
So
be able
it's
to maybe be
fascinating. I
open
love
to
it.
that, if you give yourself the permission to, grieve it and not look at it, no,
Yep.
don't judge yourself about it. Again, I think when we try to suppress things is when we end up even more so in that resistance mode. And if
Makes it harder. Makes it
makes
much
it
harder.
harder, so much harder, especially in the world we live in right now. Everything's moving fast, you guys. So,
Yeah.
I mean, allow yourself the time to process the things that come and go because we're going to
Yeah.
be able to take more in when we give ourselves the permission to be able to grieve things that we didn't
Yeah, and
realize we were grieving.
what I'm thinking of quickly is this, like, all this AI stuff.
Mhm.
Like grieving, I'm going to be going through a grieving process of, uh, originality
Mm.
from people, from humans. I keep saying that they're taking the human out of humanity.
Mhm.
I'm not for it at all. I'm sure some of you love it. I don't. For a much spiritual reason. There's lots
A
of other
lot of
reasons.
people who weren't
It's not going to lead us in the right direction. It's actually bringing us further into this, denying our divine
inauthentic.
feminine. Yeah. And so, but it's going to happen at least for a while.
Mhm.
So it's already happening. So am I going to resist it? or am I going to say, okay, I can find other ways to
Mhm.
connect. I can stay original.
Yeah.
Everything I write, every word that comes out of a post, everything that happens
Mhm.
is coming from me and from my heart and from my soul. And I don't have to get on board with that, right? But I don't have to resist the whole system, right? It's like a
Right.
merging. It's like, it's not one or the other, it's and, or it's, both.
Mhm.
It's like, you guys can do that and I can still stay over here and stay true
Right.
to myself,
And not have
right?
yourself in a way that's so much momentum is, again, it's same going back to that in my mind, fighting a tide.
I don't have to be
Are
so
you ever
emotionally caught up in
Yeah.
it. I
Because
don't
are
have to be
you
so yeah.
Yeah. Because as big as it feels, or again, as big as a wave, right, that is coming, you thinking like, "I'm gonna stand here and I'm gonna hold this wave back." Like, the amount of energy that's gonna take is gonna exhaust you. Or
And
you're
then it's
like
gonna keep me out of my purpose, and it's gonna
right.
derail me, and bring me down or whatever, so I can accept it.
You
I
can
don't
ride that
necessarily
wave. You
I
can
could
say
ride the wave.
you could say, "I get that this is this. I'm doing it this way, and here's why." And that in itself is going to carve out this new path of people who are like, "Hey, by the way, I'm an original writer. I don't use any AI." It's going to create a path because there are gonna be people who are like,
It's
"Yeah,
gonna
man, I'm
separate
using it for X, Y, and Z," and it's super beneficial for
certain
businesses for
things.
certain things, right?
I
It is.
definitely I'm not, like, anti-AI
Yeah, right.
overall,
But
I'm
in
I'm
terms of the
anti-AI for
arts,
creativity.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. So there's going to come a point where people, because art is going to become a critical asset to us, I believe it, in all forms. As we go through all this evolution, we're gonna need art
Mhm.
because it's authentic, and it's the human experience, and it's the reflection of the human experience, and we're gonna be
Yes.
longing for that
Yeah.
as more and more artificial intelligence is
Yeah.
among
So
us,
just let it
right?
do its thing. Let
Yeah.
it run its course.
Yes,
Let
because
it do its thing and trust that ultimately, you
yes,
know, the spirit and the soul and the human and everything connected is going to
yes.
prevail.
It is, and here's the deal. There's an entire think of it like this too, and I mean, I know you can relate to this. Our own food and how things have changed for how long has been pumped full of synthetic things in order to create more profit. There is now entire chains of stores that are all organic. So the same
Mhm.
thing is going to happen in that art form that people are gonna say, "I don't wanna shop at Walmart for my vegetables because it's full of shit." Just like,
Mhm.
I don't wanna read this book written by this person who used AI to do the whole thing because it's full of shit. I wanna
Mm.
go ahead and read the book that I know was coming from Whole Foods. You know what I mean? That was organic.
It's
You know what I
organic,
mean?
exactly, it's all
Yeah.
organic.
You're gonna
Yeah,
be a Whole Foods
yeah.
author.
So if anybody I'm holding this stone, if anybody out there is into I'm pretty sure people watching this are into stones. We used to pick them when we did our
Yes.
audio, when we sit in the meditation cave, and I haven't been doing it much that we've been on video. But this here is called Apache Tears.
I love this stone, by the way.
Yeah.
Love.
This is
Explain to us what it is because I remember you talking about it, and it's amazing.
I mean, Apache, right? Obviously comes
Mhm.
from like Native American roots. I
Mhm.
don't know exactly where it's mined, but it's about it helps you through the grief process, right?
Mm.
Tears. It also helps you with your psychic ability as well. So it's tapping in, feeling safe to tap in and to it's going to help you bring those emotions to the surface.
Yeah.
It's going to help you feel them and feel safe bringing them up and then
Love that.
just feeling like soft and,
Yeah.
like, vulnerable in it and feeling okay to be in that vulnerability with your pain and your grief, and then it's going to, I guess psychically, I don't know, it's different for everybody, right? But, like, for me, it's like, "Okay, now where do I go with this? How can I
Mhm.
use this?" Giving me the ability to say, "Okay, where in the world can I help others, through
Mhm.
my own healing process?" So,
I love
yeah,
it. Love
go
it so
pick
much.
this guy up.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up one last thing too that it just dawned on me the other day. We just which is incredible to me to think about how much has happened in the short span, but this show has been alive for a year this month.
Yes, I totally yes, I forgot. We
Yes.
forgot to
Oh,
say this.
I
Yes,
was
I'm so
like,
glad you
"Oh
brought it up.
my gosh." Yeah, a year this
March
month.
2nd.
Yes.
March 2nd
Yes.
was our
Amazing.
first upload, our first
Love
show.
it.
So, yeah, we have a whole if you're just catching us now, we have a whole season 1. It's just Ginny and
Yes.
I
Yep.
in the meditation cave. It's just audio. and it was
Love it.
awesome. We had our candles lit. We had this awesome,
Yes.
really good vibe.
Yep.
And then season 2 starts with video. So we've had a pretty great evolution so far in a
Yeah.
very short span of time.
How
Things have
many
changed,
and you know this better than me, but, like, where yeah, we've had to evolve. We've had to. Well, and believe me, there was points I
like
fought a
everything,
bunch of it, like, just
like
'cause life,
everything.
right?
Yes,
We've had to evolve. We're here on video now. Like, there's things that we're super uncomfortable about, and I get for me, like, I've had to go back to a job which has turned out, amazing. There's amazing things about it, but let me tell you, like, I kicked there was a bunch that I was fighting and grieving. But where I mean, in our year's time, what do you're gonna know better than me, but what are
this
our
will be our
downloads
20
at?
well, this will be our 24th episode, and we're at about 2,800 downloads.
Wow.
So that's
For a
pretty good
year.
for only 24 shows,
That's really
you
good,
know?
and it's very cool, and we're thankful to all of you. Thank you so much,
Yes.
and for continuing to be here through our because we're Amanda and I on our own, even in our lives, we're evolving, we're becoming these things. We're evolving as a show. We've got things happening. It's kinda wild. It's a wild deal, and we're trying to continue to ride that wave as well. So, there's no way that you guys haven't had insane amounts of evolution, both painful and positive in the last year, because I know both of us have. So, thank you guys for being here with
Yes.
us, and hopefully we've been able to help out a little bit and continue to foster that in you, because the more that you continue that, the more that we will, and that was our whole point
Yeah,
why we
and then
started this show.
yeah, and then the more healing can come to the planet. That's really
Exactly.
the ultimate, like, overarching focus of our work, and
Mhm.
we're not like, "Oh, we're gonna save the world, we wanna save the world," but, like, I do truly believe that tapping into this emotional side of
Mhm.
you and embracing it and loving it, whether
Mhm.
giving love to all the parts of you, all that kind of stuff, is going to heal your energy, which is then
Mhm.
going to just make life better for you, better for the people around you, and then they're going to pass it on to others. And then
Yes.
there's going to be more love grown, more peace grown,
Yep.
because it all starts with what's going on in here. So we're so thankful for you
Yes.
guys.
We
We
are.
wouldn't be here without you. If nobody was watching, we would have probably stopped this 6 months ago, right? Like we wouldn't keep
Maybe
going.
not. Maybe
So
we would've just listened to ourselves, I think maybe because we 'cause we're cool like that.
exactly. But we're
Oh,
so
we
grateful you're here. And yeah,
yes.
so if you
Thank
like
you.
the show, tell a friend about it,
Yes.
spread the word, get it out
Yeah.
there,
Leave a
share this
comment,
video.
like, subscribe, like, we are on all the places
Yeah.
now, including YouTube, so
Yeah.
you can find us. We are happy you're here with us, and we hope you, keep evolving and letting your soul rise as we are trying to do the
Yes.
same.
Yes. Next week, we're actually putting 2 shows out back to back because I skipped last week because I was away. Um, but, next week is gonna be, a show with Nina Rodriguez. She hosts a Grief and Light podcast, and we're gonna be talking, again, more about grief and the way that it shows up, and if there's shame around it, and how,
Yeah.
specifically around, like, how it's supposed to be this, like, nice packaged, tidied up thing that after a month or so, everybody, or maybe even less, people expect you to just like go back to like work
Be
or go back
kind.
to your life, and oh, you're still crying, or you're still, and like all of these sort of misconceptions um around the grieving process. So please join me again next week. And
Yes.
yeah, you guys have a great day. Thank you so much for being here. We love you.
Yes. We love you. Have a good one.